Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
Alright, so continuing from the Timeline Differences series that we're actually doing here on this channel, thanks to research from Layla, whose link will be in the channel description below, and also from me, we are actually going to go on to the next character that you guys voted for. So the next character that you guys actually voted for was Kilik. Today we're actually going to cover the timeline differences for Kilik. Now that's the past timeline versus this timeline, so Soul Calibur 1 through 5, and then versus Soul Calibur 6 and onward. Soul Edge seems to be in a place where it shares a timeline with both timelines, so it seems that that might actually be where the actual choices stem from that made the changes. The information was compiled in this character in-game from Soul Calibur and Soul Calibur 2 profiles for Kilik, Maxi, Xianghua, and Edgemaster to create this timeline of events from Kilik's perspective. In the old timeline, Kilik was an orphan of unknown origin who was taken in by the Ling Shang-Su Temple and brought to learn their ways. By far, his closest confidant was his fellow student named Jinglan, who felt like an older sister to him. The two of them were set to inherit 2 of the 3 sacred treasures, with Kilik set to inherit the Kali Yuga bow staff and Jinglan set to inherit the sacred mirror, the Dvapara Yuga. On the night of their inheritance ceremony, the evil seed caused every monk in the temple to go mad and start killing one another, Kilik included. The only one who was not impacted by this was Jinglan, who was being protected by the Dvapara influence. Kilik was also forced to kill her and his other fellow monks out of self-defense before falling unconscious. He awoke later on to find that Edgemaster had found and saved him before burning the whole temple. Edgemaster spent the next 3 years teaching Kilik how to overcome the darkness inside of him. One day, Edgemaster assigned Kilik to a mission, to find and destroy Soul Edge. Upon doing so, Kilik would atone for the sins that haunted him from that night of the evil seed. While traveling, he encountered Maxi's crew, who wanted to help his cause. The crew and Kilik were then attacked by Astaroth. Maxi arrived onto the scene and he and Kilik fended off Astaroth and his horde together, until Astaroth removed the Dvapara Yuga from Kilik, causing him to become violent and lash out at Maxi. Maxi, being preoccupied with defending against Kilik, was unable to help his crew and they all were killed by Astaroth. After helping Kilik regain his Dvapara Yuga, the two of them agreed to travel together, each of them with their own goals. Kilik to destroy Soul Edge and Maxi to seek revenge against Astaroth for the death of his crew. Along the way they met Xianghua, who posed as the star dancer and performer in the traveling Chinese opera, but was actually an undercover soldier for the Ming Dynasty's empire. She was sent to collect Soul Edge for the emperor. The 3 of them found Nightmare's castle and entered, only to find Astaroth standing in their way. Maxi urged Kilik and Xianghua to go on while he dealt with Astaroth. The 2 of them found Nightmare, who Kilik defeated. But the 2 were then brought inside the Astral Chaos to fight Inferno. With Kilik being too tired to fight, Xianghua opted to fight Inferno in his stead. Her sword revealed itself to be Soul Calibur and was able to use it to defeat him. The 2 then escaped the Astral Chaos, though Soul Calibur was left behind. Having been separated from Maxi, Kilik and Xianghua journeyed back to China together, then part ways, and Kilik returned to Edgemaster to continue his training, where he remained for the next 4 years before the events of Soul Calibur 2 took place. New timeline. Soul Calibur 6 retells his story with many of the same beats, but with his fair share of differences as well. His origin and background are the same, with him having been raised as an orphan in the Ling Shang-Su Temple and having adopted Shenglian as his older sister. He was also set to inherit the Kali Yuga just like before. The Night of the Evil Seed plays out the same way, with Shengan being killed by Kilik and with Kilik being rescued by Edgemaster. This is where some of the differences start to arise, however. Edgemaster tells Kilik while training, if you continue upon this path, the evil within you will create a second Soul Edge out of Kali Yuga. If we look to the old timeline, we find that this is the exact event that almost happens in Soul Calibur 5, which was the whole focus of Shiba's story, as described in the New Legend of Project Soul art book. However, we should not be too quick to assume this is the foreshadowing yet. Another difference sees Kilik's Soul Chronicle outside of the main story, when Edgemaster tells Kilik that if he wants to learn how to control the evil within him, he can simply be him without the assistance of the Dvapara Yuga. This contrasts with the old timeline because there we see Kilik wearing the Dvapara Yuga in the same way, shape, or form, and all of his first player designs throughout Soul Calibur 4, either as a belt or as a necklace. Here though, he is being told explicitly that he has the potential to be allowed to remove it eventually. Kilik is set on his quest to destroy Soul Edge and encounters Maxi's crew, same as before, and they are all slaughtered by Astaroth, and just like before, Kilik and Maxi decide to travel together with their own goals in mind. The 2 of them encounter Mitsurugi briefly, who warns them of Taki's potential interfering with their plans, before heading off to a different location. While Maxie and Kilik are traveling together, they meet Xianghua, who decides to tag along with them. The second big difference happens afterward when Kilik is assaulted by Gro. Gro wanted to test Kilik before telling him where they could go to find Nightmare. On their way there, Maxie separates from the group and Kilik and Xianghua are intercepted by Taki, who acknowledged that Kilik was able to slowly rein in the evil inside of him after almost losing control. They reunite with Maxie and head towards Ostrainsburg, fighting their way through the Lizardmen and Ivy before leaving Maxie behind to fight Astaroth. Gro leads Kilik and Xianghua to Nightmare, then parts ways with them. Nightmare and Kilik fight, and Nightmare is defeated. Then Inferno appears and pulls Kilik and Xianghua into the Astral Chaos. Xianghua's sword reveals herself to be Soul Calibur once again, and she uses it to fight Inferno. However, unlike in the old timeline, Inferno wears Xianghua out. Just as Inferno is about to go for the killing blow, Kilik jumps in and blocks it, resulting in the shattering of the Dvapara Yuga. But unlike before, even though he physically has taken on a malfested appearance, he is in full control of himself. He and Xianghua then work together to defeat Inferno. Soul Calibur is left behind and they escape in the Astral Chaos. Xianghua laments how they had lost their sacred treasures before showing Kilik that she had kept a fragment of the Shattered Dvapara Yuga, but instead of accepting it, he asks her to keep it. Perhaps as one of the biggest differences between the two timelines that shows that, unlike in the old time, Kilik overcame the evil inside of himself much quicker and has shown a capacity to move on from his trauma that he didn't have in the old timeline. Part of his was possible because the encounter he had with Sophitia, whom encouraged him not to forget the past, but to not let it burden him, and to be present for the loved ones that he has in the here and now. We still see more of Kilik after the story in Libra of Souls. He is traveling back with Xianghua, and the two of them confirming that they were unable to find Maxie before leaving. Kilik keeps his promise of taking Xianghua home, then goes back to Edgemaster as the story gears up for what is to come. So yet again, as I've stated before, we see major differences that are streaming from after the events of Soul Edge, particularly from Soul Calibur forward. This game does go up to the timeline of Soul Calibur 2 and crosses a little bit into it with the year like 1590. You unlock everything from Libra of Souls. But in this actual timeline, we see a lot of differences like actually happening. The major difference being he doesn't actually even need the Dvapara Yuga to control himself. He actually learns how to control himself without it, and with entrusted with the piece after Inferno shatters it, he turns it down, letting Xianghua actually take it in his stead. So there's a lot of familiarity here, but there's also a lot of differences coming with this. The fact that Edgemaster is even teaching him a different path is something that's completely different between the two timelines. Not only that, but his relationship with even Moxie and Xianghua is somewhat different. He plays a different, more vital role than he did before, as he was able to actually counter Inferno and save Xianghua instead of letting her be defeated by Inferno, even though she had the use of Soul Calibur. So this is showing that Kilik is actually going to be playing a much larger role. And we see this with some of the timeline differences, that some of the characters are actually going to be going on to play a larger role. Even the fact that he actually met Gro and all that stuff happened, that's a complete difference, because as we know, Gro is not even in the old timeline at all. So there's a lot going on and happening behind the scenes here that are actually leading towards Soul Calibur 7 that actually helps tell the story and helps build the narrative, and Kilik will be one of the main focuses. You can definitely tell. I think Kilik, along with Huang and possibly Cassandra, might actually make up the main three that are going to be telling the story going forward. I think that there is a lot of potential here, especially with the changes that we see branching off simultaneously. But it's like, they seem like small changes, but these small changes literally go into like a much bigger narrative. Like these, like, it's like the butterfly effect, right? When a butterfly flaps his wings and the other part of the world. When a butterfly flaps his wings on the other side of the world, a typhoon happens because of the direct cause of that flapping of the wings. That's literally what the butterfly effect entails, and it's showing that like the timeline is going to be completely different, and they're going to veer off into a completely different direction. We already see that with the Swords and Shepherds. Even though there was something kind of similar with the Assassin's Guild going on in the old timeline, it seems that this one is veering up more for character arcs as opposed to overarching story. So we're actually going to have the characters serve the purpose of telling the story through themselves, as opposed to just being characters within the story, which gives them a lot better grounding and a lot more room to grow and things of that nature. But only that, we see Xianghua actually fighting together with Kilik, and then she might actually play a larger role. There's a lot of things in this which actually leads to potentially more things happening. Like maybe when Aeon actually shows up, he's now going to harbor a grudge against Kilik for defeating the other Lizardmen. Who knows? There's a lot of things in this that like are still unquestioned, and we can only find out when actually Soul Calibur 7 happens. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But I don't know, I thought this was a really fun timeline differences because there is quite a few in here actually that I thought were not that I remembered happening before. So again, thanks to Layla for actually doing a lot of the research for this video and helping me present it in this way so that it's easy to conceive for other people and easy to digest. So I want to thank you guys for watching. We did have the poll that I'll show up for last video, which actually said which character will be covered in the next timeline episode of differences, and it was Shanghua with 63% over Maxi with 38%. It doesn't mean we're not going to get to Maxi. It just means that in 2 weeks, we're going to cover Shanghua, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to cover Maxi. The interim weeks, we're still going to be doing videos. I think that was a common misconception with the last one. We give shorts every day, and there's still going to be videos every single Sunday, like brand new videos. So just stay here for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. And check out the Discord so we can chat about some fun stuff, and join the Yoon-Fam if it strikes your fancy. And as that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to a close. And as I always say, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.